We are live, and I didn't know it. So I'm glad the microphone wasn't that hot. But good morning, and thanks for joining us for this special interview. Known as much for the close bond of their more than 8.5 million members worldwide as they are for knocking on doors, Jehovah's Witnesses are doing something this week that they haven't done in more than 2 years. They've returned to in-person meetings. They've opened the doors to their kingdom halls as they also prepare to observe the memorial of the death of Jesus Christ. But before we introduce our special guest, we want to alert our viewers that the historic vote to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court is expected to take place at 1:45 p.m. Eastern today. We invite you to join us over at YouTube, our YouTube channel at Let It Be Known, Black Press USA NNPA, where we will bring you live coverage of that history-making event. So stay tuned as Judge Jackson makes history as the first Black woman to ascend to the nation's highest court. Also tune in tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Eastern for our regularly scheduled Let It Be Known broadcast as we update the day's headlines, including Tiger Woods' unbelievable return to the Masters. He just got underway, and I will tell you that after one hole, he is on par. He shot a par on the first hole, his first tournament back at the Masters since that horrific accident a year ago in which he feared he would become an amputee. Also, Major League Baseball opens today. Its season is honoring the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color line with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But now, Jehovah's Witnesses are back, and the hugs, smiles, and singing was almost surreal. Let's introduce the U.S. spokesperson for the Jehovah's Witnesses, Robert Hendricks. Good morning, Robert Hendricks.
Good morning, Stacy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. As I said at the top, and we've seen videos everywhere, the smiles, the hugs. I'm going to start there. What was it like to be back in in-person meetings?
For me, I had the privilege of being down with my parents in Florida. And to give the first in-person talk at their meeting was a great pleasure and a privilege for me. And to experience with them the excitement of being back together. There were tears, there were lots of hugs, there was really a sense of joy that we are in a different place now. We feel like we're moving ahead at a very special time in our year as well, because it comes at a perfect time with a special talk, a special lecture that's really global. And also our memorial, the Memorial of Christ's death, which is coming up on April 15th.
Yeah, for the first time in more than 2 years, you've begun in-person meetings. Tell us, now you told us, you gave us a little bit of an overview there, but the reaction of folks, I mean, as you take in the reactions from congregations around the country and around the globe, what's that been like?
Well, I think it started out with a shock, because I think most of us didn't know it was coming. It's been over 2 years. We've been very productive. There was no real need to get back. There was no driving need. Unlike many churches, we don't take collections at our meetings, and we don't have a paid clergy. Everybody's a volunteer. Our meeting places are simple. So though all of those factors that went into other churches moving forward with worship services in person, they really weren't a part of us. In fact, we hadn't lost membership in the 2 years globally. We've had 400,000 new ones be baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses. In the United States alone, in the last year, a 3% increase. So our meeting attendance was outstanding. It was excess of 1.5 million. We only have a fewer than 1.3 million Jehovah's Witnesses in the United States. So, but clearly there was something that was needed. You get to a point where we talk about Zoom fatigue, but also the fact that you want to be a part of each other's lives again. You need that we need as human beings, we need that touch. We need to see each other. And so the organization felt like this was the time. We have put the pandemic is not quite behind us. We're still in a pandemic. We still have an urgency, and we have to be careful. But it was definitely the time to be able to give people a choice. Remember that Jehovah's Witnesses are not simply coming all back to our kingdom halls. We are giving a choice to our congregants to either come back or to remain where they are, and some are doing that. But those who are coming back, there has been great joy. I mean, we experienced it too down in Puerto Rico when we did our pilot meetings some months ago. There was just an incredible energy. But at the same time, there's anxiety. You know, for 2 years, we have been raising the level of urgency about this pandemic among our brothers and sisters, among all of our congregants, in fact, to the world. We've raised that level of urgency and alertness, and all of a sudden now we're saying, come back. And so there is a level of anxiety. We heard one person last week who said that she was just sitting in the parking lot and she was afraid to go in. She did, and she was happy she did. That happened also in Puerto Rico. We interviewed a young sister, late 20s, who said, you know, I came here, I wanted to come, I sat in the parking lot, I was scared, I prayed, I went in, and she said, after that, I never want to leave. And I think that level of anxiety and fear, it kind of melts away, especially because we're taking protocols in the Kingdom Hall. The congregation, generally, they're all masked. And so we know masks work. And those who aren't comfortable in physical touching, we're respecting that. And we're respecting the personal decisions to vaccinate. We're respecting the personal decisions to come or not come. And so I think it's a beautiful environment that has maintained our unity and now is enhancing our unity.
Yeah, and so Robert, why now? Some say, why did it take so long? We saw other groups open up. We saw other businesses obviously open up, and certainly religious institutions. Why now? And you know, why did it take so long?
Why now? Let's go back to what you said about businesses opening up. You know, there clearly there's an economic incentive for businesses. There's a need. There's also a desire among people generally to get back to a sense of normalcy. But I think all of us know there will be no normal after this pandemic. It's a different world that we live in, and we have to acknowledge that. But 2 years ago, when we shut down our kingdom halls, when we shut down our public ministry and suspended it and went to a virtual format, it was very clear that people were in danger. That getting the COVID-19 was almost like a death sentence in the beginning, especially for those in the New York area, Washington, southern, the Gulf area in Texas and in parts of California. And so today it's very, very different. We've gone through 2 variants. Many churches opened up the summer before the Delta variant, and then the Delta variant was absolutely deadly. But then many opened up after the Delta variant receded in the summer. We did some testing with a few congregations in Puerto Rico and Connecticut, but we resisted opening up at the time. And in January, we were seeing 1 million cases a day, and translating to the highest hospitalizations ever in the 2 years of the COVID-19. So I think it's pretty clear why we didn't open up for the first 2 years. It was in fact very wise looking back. Our timing is outstanding. And when you look back, what's the difference between today and 2 years ago? One, we understand, and we all understand, not only us as an organization, but people understand COVID-19 a lot better than we did before. When we didn't know whether it was even airborne, we know it's airborne. We have vaccines, we have boosters. Vaccines work, boosters work. We recognize that. So now a person can actually take a personal responsibility and say, I'll take it or not. I'll have the added protection or not. We know that masks work. And we know that this disease is airborne. So, and we also know individually that not all masks are created equal, that there are masks that are better than others. We also have the ability now to have therapeutics. There's antivirals on the market. Well, if we get something, we can get a prescription and get an antiviral. It can mitigate the damage of the disease, even if we haven't been boosted or vaccinated. And finally, 2 years ago, we didn't have the option to go to a hybrid format. we went right to Zoom, we went right to virtual, but we didn't have the option to say come or not come. Today, we've equipped our Kingdom Halls, we have the health protocol, we have the equipment to be able to not only have live in-person meetings, but simultaneously have that meeting also be distributed to those on video conferencing and virtual technology using Zoom. And while many churches have for years used Facebook and YouTube, Jehovah's Witnesses are very different with our meetings. They're discussion based. And we're very close. We want to see people. So it's not just about sending out a live stream so that people can see us. We want to see them. It's not about just sending out a signal so that they can hear us. We want to hear them. We want to hear their discussions, their praise to Jehovah and Jesus, their personal expressions. And then we want to break out with them in small groups so that we don't lose that small congregation feel, that family atmosphere. We can do all of that now, and we're at a different point in the disease. We also recognize, Stacy, that it's not over. And so we have to remain vigilant. And we're not minimizing where we are in the state of the pandemic, but we're recognizing that we're in a very, very different place 2 years hence.
Yeah, and how is it possible that you have remained united as a global organization with more than 120,000 congregations in 239 countries, especially given the challenges of the last 2 years?
It's a miracle. And really, we just have to say it's God's blessing, because as people individually, we all have our views. Perhaps we even at the beginning said, why are we shutting down? Why can't we go door to door? Why can't we go to our Bible studies and visit their homes? Individually, we may have things in our heart, and we have to align them to the greater good. And as Jehovah's Witnesses, we do that very well. We're a very united people, and we're united by the bond of love. Jesus said in John 13:35 that his disciples would have love among themselves. You would know them by that. It would be an identifying mark of them. And so when you have love, there's peace. When you have peace, there's unity. And the unity, the binding element of unity, the Bible says, is love. Love is the perfect bond of union. And so when you look at Jehovah's Witnesses today, we're certainly not perfect, but as an organization, to be able to shut down at one time, be completely united in all 120,000 congregations in all 239 lands, and then to be able within a couple of weeks to restart globally, it's a miracle that doesn't exist in any other organization on the planet.
Well, everyone, Robert, learns from history. They learn from challenges and experiences. What have been the lessons? Are there any silver linings?
I think there are. First of all, when you go through something like this as an organization and you go through it successfully, as we have, we've been very active, since March of 2020 to November 2021, we've spent 400 million hours just in this country in writing letters and making phone calls. We've had an average attendance at our meetings of more than 1.5 million, whereas we only have fewer than 1.3 million Jehovah's Witnesses. We released 77 new language translations of the Bible during that period of time. We held 2 virtual conventions in 500 languages that were available in 239 lands. We have been active. And so when you go through something like this, you remain active, and you go through it as congregations, as groups, as the organization. You individually get stronger, but you bond closer together. It's like being in the trenches together for a war. And this was a war in some sense, especially at the beginning. And we cared for each other, which was beautiful. We distributed food boxes. Hundreds of millions of food boxes were distributed by Jehovah's Witnesses Family Program, the largest organization or largest distribution in the country. All of that kept us so busy that we hardly knew the time passed, and we kept us together. Our congregations are small purposefully. And then they're broken up into smaller pastoral groups. And so shepherding was key, keeping in touch on a regular basis. At the beginning, it was daily and then weekly, so that we knew our older ones were cared for, that they had the food that they needed, that they didn't have to leave their home to put themselves at risk. Probably hundreds, if not thousands, of lives were saved by those efforts. And so, you go through something like that and you look back and you say, God cared for us in a very different way in the last 2 years than we've ever seen before, and that builds your faith. Also, though, when you look at our organization, we're really better able to deal with the fact that not everybody can go to an in-person meeting. It's been like that for years with Jehovah's Witnesses. We've had phone line hookups and people on the other line, on that line. Sometimes in congregations, we'd have 15 or 20 who perhaps because of health or age or disability weren't able to come. And now we're able to see them. We're able to provide that option in this hybrid format. And no doubt it has been able to serve them better and lift their spirits to be able to be not only to hear what we are doing, but also to see and be seen, to hear and be heard. And I think that has been a wonderful blessing. And finally, I think our in-person ministry being suspended 2 years ago helped us to rediscover some old methods, writing letters, making phone calls. And in some ways, we've covered our areas called territories and congregations better than we have in many years, and reached people that we would have never reached before. So I think I can go on and on about the silver linings, but I will say this: it's not to minimize the very horrific effect this pandemic has had on the world and on Jehovah's organization, on God's people among Jehovah's Witnesses, because we've lost many, and many have gotten sick. So we don't minimize that, but we look at these silver linings, and they're numerous.
Yeah, you mentioned letter writing and other forms of your ministry. I know a lot of folks who are Jehovah's Witnesses and who are not Jehovah's Witnesses are wondering, when will you be knocking on doors again?
Well, that's a very different question than going back to meetings. And let's just explain the difference. It's kind of obvious. We're saying to our congregants, make the choice. We would like you to come. In fact, the organization has said it's our earnest desire to be together in person, especially for our special talk and memorial. But we recognize too that some are not going to be in a position to do that for whatever reason. Maybe they're fearful. Maybe they're immunocompromised. Maybe they're not quite ready to go to an in-person meeting. So we're providing that choice. And so a congregant, a meeting attender, can make a choice. When we start knocking on doors, our neighbors aren't going to be able to make a choice. Now, that's scriptural. You know, Acts 20:20 says we go from door to door, house to house. And Jesus went from village to village, city to city, town to town. And so we're doing what we are being told to do. But at this point, probably knocking on a door in many communities, it's not something that is going to be welcome at the moment. And so we'll progressively make that decision, no doubt. You know, there's a lot of things we can do in person that we're not doing now. We can do in-person Bible studies, which we're doing virtually now. So that's an invitation by somebody to come and visit them on a weekly basis at no cost to them. So that may start up at some point. We have cart witnessing, right? We may see our carts again in major cities around the world, and in towns and rail stations in all of the United States. We may also be able to go to somebody's home that has shown interest. All of that, no doubt, will start well before our door-to-door ministry. In other words, it probably will start progressively, and there's no way for us to know where this pandemic is going. So we'll wait on the organization to let us know.
Yeah, and just to reiterate the importance for Jehovah's Witnesses to go back to in-person meetings. Why was that so important?
I think that you get to a point where you look at the virtual meetings through Zoom and you say, they've really provided this stopgap, right? We had no choice before. We had to find a way. And so within just a week or two of shutting down our meetings, we forged a global agreement with Zoom. And we all look back on that moment because we were able then, just a week later, to have a worldwide memorial with 20 million people virtually, which was amazing because of the quick work that was done. And we look back and we say, what a blessing that was. But now, 2 years later, we look at it and we say, we can't be complacent. You know, as people, as individuals, we need each other. We need each other in a different way than simply Zoom provides. it takes us to a different level. It increases our joy. It augments the experience. And right now, we're at a point where it's the most important moment in the Christian calendar right now, because we're going into the commemoration of the death of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so these moments are precious. Being together is a blessing and a privilege. And so being able to do it again really is something that was necessary. And we're confident that the timing as an organization, as individuals, is right on time.
Yeah, I want to get more into the commemoration of the death of Jesus Christ in a moment, but adjusting to the struggles of COVID-19, folks, it's peeled back the layers of many, many organizations, individuals as well. But what has it revealed about Jehovah's Witnesses?
I think it's revealed that we're very flexible, not only as people, but also as an organization. I think when we first heard as individuals, now I grew up in a Jehovah's Witness family, made my dedication when I was 15. When we first heard the ministry is shutting down, our meetings are being suspended, our conventions, in-person conventions are being suspended. These are three signatures of our worship, of who we are. They're in our DNA. Being a witness, you can't be a witness without testifying. We testify from door to door. We testify person to person. Our congregations remain small because we want to be a family. What family doesn't see each other? Well, that changed during the pandemic. And I think what it showed us is that we can still not only just survive, which I think a lot of people just kind of survived, but we thrived as an organization. So it's flexibility, it's resilience as an organization and as people. It's also unity in a far different way than we've seen in the past, because we were all tested. What will our obedience be? How will we do this collectively? And are we all, even if our personal preferences want us back in our in-person ministry or meetings, we needed to put our principles, our Bible principles, ahead of our preferences, and we've done that. And you can speak to that. You can, for years, we say we love our neighbor, we love life, the sacredness of life. But then to be able to make decisions that are historic, unprecedented for this organization, that really are based on those principles, really shows that this organization doesn't just talk it, but we walk it. And I think that is not only reflected organization-wide in 239 lands, but also as individuals. I'm proud of not just being a part of this organization, but the people in it who have joyfully endured the last 2 years.
Yeah, now you have began a couple of weeks back or so, a special campaign to invite your neighbors and many people to the commemoration of the death of Jesus Christ. Why? First of all, why is that so important that even non-Jehovah's Witnesses attend? And give us some information, what day, time, whatever information you can provide on that.
I'll start with the day and time. It's April 15th all over the world. And it is after sundown. So it will be a different time in your location, but it will definitely be probably after 7 o'clock in the evening, because that's when the Jewish day starts. So I'll start with that it is available in venues, in Kingdom halls all around the world. You can just go to jw.org. The memorial invitation will be right there. Find your place where you can come, and we welcome you. Why is it so important, though? That's really the key question. And probably very few people know this, even Christians. Luke 22:19 and 20. Jesus finished the Passover celebration with his apostles. Apparently, he dismissed Judas, the rebel apostle, and he made a special commemoration for the 11 faithful ones. And he said to them, he passed the cup and he passed the bread. Those were elements of the Passover meal that were left. And he said, keep doing this in remembrance of me. And so it's the only command of a holy day on the Christian calendar. And so that's why we do it. And remember that for Christians, it replaced the Passover, because the early Christians all were Jews, or they were proselytes. and they celebrated the Passover. So that was really the last final Passover, the last official Passover. They celebrated it, they ate it together, and then he introduced this meal. The Passover was celebrated once every year on Nisan 14, which is on the ancient Jewish calendar. And so Jehovah's Witnesses for the past more than 100 years have actually celebrated or commemorated his death on that very day, the very day he died. And so this year it will be April 15th. You'll notice there's a full moon in the sky. They went by the lunar calendar back in Jewish times, and we count 14 days from the new moon, and that's where we get to Nisan 14. So we start it in the evening. Of course, Jesus celebrated the Passover, and then introduced this meal probably later in that evening. The following day, which happened to be a Saturday, is when he actually gave his life. But from a Jewish calendar standpoint, it's the same day, Nisan 14, which would end with sundown on the following afternoon. So when we look back, we want to feel that moment. We want to commemorate that moment. We want to, in a sense, celebrate it in our hearts, because we realize it's the only reason why you and I can stand here today and even have a hope, because Jesus gave his life for us.
Yeah, and just going back again to the primary reason we invited you on about the in-person meetings, is there a scenario, Robert, in which you might be, the organization might be monitoring that would result in the meetings being shut down again?
I really can't tell you that, because this pandemic has taken us in so many different directions. The one thing we know for sure is that we don't know. We just don't know what tomorrow brings. But I think, again, we're in a very, very different place. So what we have seen is that there have been some outbreaks among congregants. And so where there is an outbreak, meetings may be postponed or suspended, in-person meetings on an individual congregation basis, and then and just resuming their meetings virtually. So I don't think that we see in the future a complete shutdown of our meetings or ministry. But the one thing we've learned is that we've been surprised at every corner of this pandemic. And so we'll leave that to people that make these decisions, not myself.
And again, keeping with that theme of in-person meetings, I know you discussed it earlier. Just to reiterate, any mask mandates, any social distancing mandates, what happens at a Kingdom Hall? So outsiders who might be interested in going, what could they expect as far as protocols?
Well, our protocols are going to be to make sure that Kingdom Hall is clean and healthy environment. So we have prepared them. We've prepared them not only with the technology to do a hybrid meeting, but many of our Kingdom Halls have been prepared with touchless faucets. We definitely have hand sanitizers. We have before and after meeting protocols for cleaning touch surfaces, and making sure that those protocols are in place so that is a clean environment and a healthy environment. So that's what we're doing with our Kingdom Halls. But we're also following government regulations. Jehovah's Witnesses are law-abiding, and we never saw the government regulations as onerous or as something we couldn't keep. So if there is a regulation in place for meeting in person around the world, we'll follow that regulation. Right now, in most of the United States, we are allowed to meet in groups, and social distancing is not necessary. Therefore, we're not mandating it either. We're not mandating social distancing. We're encouraging mask wearing. And I think what we've seen is 99% of folks are wearing a mask. There are some who may have to kind of just breathe a little bit, but masks are being worn generally at our meetings. There's no vaccine mandate. And so even though vaccines are protective, we're leaving that to the individual. And of course, there's no mandate to come. You can stay home and or stay where you are and receive that spiritual nourishment. So we certainly invite all of the public to come. We should have in excess of 22 million at the memorial this year, because that's where we were last year. And interestingly, in the United States, it's going to be somewhere in the area of 1 out of 100, every 134 people in the United States will be attending our memorial. 1 out of every 134 people will be attending a memorial somewhere in the United States. In places like Barbados, it will be 1 in 50. So it's amazing how many flock to Kingdom Halls and outside event venues for this very, very important event.
And before we let you go, obviously, you mentioned the public being invited, if they'd like to attend, who do they contact? Where do they go?
Well, they can contact any one of Jehovah's Witnesses if they know them, and most people do. But jw.org is really the best place. So you go to jw.org. Right now on our website is the memorial celebration commemoration. Click on there, find a meeting, find a Kingdom Hall or a venue that's closest to you, and either call up and get more information, or attend at the address listed and time. The time will be there. It will vary, 7:30. Some will be 9. Some may even be later. Because we have to get them all in on that short evening, which starts at sundown. So we really welcome any to attend any one of these commemorations around the world.
Yeah, and just for all the viewers, we use different channels today, so if anyone missed this, we'll make sure to make it even more available, widely available shortly. But thank you so much for joining us. Robert Hendricks, it is always a privilege to talk with you. Always good to hear these updates that you've been providing everyone with. And I know that there's something else coming up. Before I let you go, Marshall Custis mentioned the special talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this Sunday, we're live. So I'm sure for those who are live this Sunday, we'll be holding in most congregations around the world on April 10th, a special lecture entitled, "Where Can You Find Real Hope?" And, it's a beautiful talk. It's simple, but it talks about why has God allowed suffering? It goes into Romans chapter 8 and how God has subjected mankind to futility. It uses that term. Why? What was his reason? What hope is there? And why can we count on that hope? And it focuses on the kingdom hope that many have prayed for millennia of time. So it's a very powerful talk, and it's worth coming to. That it's a good 30 minutes to spend thinking about why we can, even in this dark time, have hope for the future.
Wow. Well, sounds exciting. And thank you so much again, Robert Hendricks, the U.S. spokesperson for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Don't forget to join us this afternoon, 1:30, a very special broadcast. Let It Be Known will bring you live the confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Of course, I'm keeping my eye on the Masters. Tiger Woods is, I'm told, at even par through 2 holes today in his comeback. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Join us again tomorrow morning as well on our regularly scheduled broadcast at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time on the Let It Be Known channels.